Hi, my name is Dr. Zachary Webb, and I'm the instructor of percussion here at the University of South Alabama. And this is a video from my series talking about the Alabama All-State Percussion Etudes for the 2021-2022 audition season. This first video is going to focus on Etude number 29 from Mitchell Peters' Intermediate Snare Drum Studies. And basically I'm going to go through some kind of basics for playing snare drum and then talk about some specific things that you should focus on in this piece. So first of all, when we are thinking about playing the snare drum, we need to have it in a good playing area for us. So part of that has to do with the height of the drum. We want the drum to be about waist high. And then we want to make sure that we're having good posture, that we're standing up straight, and that we have our feet roughly shoulder length apart so that we're firmly grounded before we start to play. Now we also want to have a good fulcrum, and all that means is it's a fancy word for pivot point. So if you take your snare drum, I'm going to take one from right over here. If you take your hand and you're going to use the fatty part of your thumb on the side of the stick, and your pointer finger is going to wrap around so that you're holding it between your fatty part of your thumb and kind of one of your knuckles on your pointer finger, and the rest of your fingers just wrap around. Okay, you don't want to hold too tight, but you don't want to hold it too loose either. So it's going to have to be somewhere in the middle. The best way I've heard it described is you want to be kind of like you're holding a bird. You don't want to hold it too tight and kill it, but you also don't want to hold it so loose that it flies away. Okay, and all that you're really doing is the pivot point is just a it's like, I use the analogy of a seesaw. You know how on a seesaw it kind of moves like this? It's the same thing, except it's where you hold the stick, so it's going to move freely from this point. Okay? Now, in terms of where to play on the drum, we want to make sure, first of all, that we come up in a relaxed position and that our sticks are in a point. And we want to be slightly off-center from the center of the snare drum. Now, if you're playing on a marching drum, you're going to play in the middle. And technically, you could play in the middle on a concert drum, but this is a different style. It's a concert-style etude. And if we're playing something more rudimental, playing in the middle is more appropriate. But for a concert-style etude, such as the Mitchell Peters, the Anthony Cerrone pieces, anything by Jacques Delacluse, that you're going to want to play a little bit off-center, so it has not quite such a harsh sound. We just want to lighten it up a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about some basics. So first of all, we're starting here. It's measure 25 on Etude number 29. This is page 41 in the book. That's where you're going to start and play to the end of the piece, basically. What I would suggest, first of all, is you need to have a really firm understanding of the rhythms themselves. And, you know, this piece is challenging in one aspect because you're playing not anything technically difficult in terms of the rhythms. You know, that's mostly quarters, eighths, 16th notes. The challenge comes when you start crossing different meters. So this is a mixed meter piece, and that just means that there's a bunch of different time signatures that are throughout the work. So if we look at measure 25, where you're supposed to start, we have two measures of 4/4, and then see right off the bat here in the next measure in 27, on the next line, you're in 5/4. Okay? So really go through and understand how the time signature changes work. You might start as simply as just counting through the time signatures without playing the actual music. So, for example, if we start at measure 25, you could clap through it or play it on your drum, however you want to. You might go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, and that was measure 31 where I just stopped, and so on. Now, maybe you don't need to do that, but if you think that might help, that's pretty easy. So, I mean, you might as well just start there. Now, once you do that, obviously, you need to start actually understanding the rhythms. So, start looking at the actual rhythms that you're going to be playing. So, for example, take out all the drags, flams, rolls, all that stuff. We're just going to play the straight rhythms. So for the very first measure, this is measure 25, through that whole, we're going to go 3 measures. So measure 1, 2, and 3. So 25, 26, 27. You're going to go 1, a 2, and 3, 4, E, and a 1, 2, 3, E, and 4, 1, and a 2, 3, 4, 5, because that's a 5/4 bar. So we go all the way to beat 5. So once you understand the rhythms, then you can start to add other things in. So, but the rhythm is really the most important thing. You know, it's the foundation of what we play. So you need to start there and kind of build up from that. Now, like we just did a little chunk, so I would suggest, depending on how challenging it is for you, doing little chunks, 3 or 4 bars, then trying to put them together until you can get through the whole thing with just the rhythmic structure. Okay? The next step would obviously be to add some of the more ornamental things. So I would probably suggest starting with the rolls, because that's really the next easiest thing I would think to add. So, for example, those same 3 measures, you go 1, a 2, and roll, or E, and a 1, 2, 3, E, and 4. 1, and a roll, 2, 3, 5. Cool. And for your check pattern for these, I would just go ahead and use 16th notes. What a check pattern is, if you don't know, is basically what your hands are doing underneath the rolls. So, for example, the first measure, it's 1, a 2, and 3 E, and a 4 E, and a. So see on beat 3 where we roll, I'm still going to play 3 E, and a, which is alternating sticking, so right, left, right, left. Now, on top of that sticking, I'm going to put a buzz roll. And that's how we kind of get the check pattern, and that's how we talk about rolls. Now, after the rolls, I would add, whatever grace notes. You've got flams and you have drags in this piece, so make sure that you work on those. You want to have open flams, so the key to that is making sure that they just drop at the same time. You don't want them flat, and that just means playing at the same time. You want to hear the grace note slightly before the primary note. Okay? And then for drags, you just add the diddle to the grace note. So it needs to be about the same distance from the primary note. Okay? One other thing that I'll make note of, if we look at this piece, we have on the second line, this is measure 30, we have our first accents. So just make sure you bring those out. And when we get to, let's see, where's the first one? When we get to measure 41, I think we've probably all seen these kind of symbols. It looks like a sideways accent. That's called a marcato. It's supposed to be a marcato marking. That is not a rim shot, okay? So whatever you do not go into your audition and play a bunch of rim shots where you have these marcato markings, because that's not what it is, okay? It's just a different type of accent. So it's a little bit more weighted. So try to maybe differentiate between the accents and the marcato notes, but do not play rim shots. Other than that, just follow the rhythms. Make sure you're doing proper dynamics. Now, if we look at measure 25, there's nothing marked right at that measure, so we have to back up. So we see about 4 measures before that it's supposed to start forte. So the 25 should start forte, and then you're going to go for about 3 bars, and then decrescendo to piano, and you're going to play this whole next section piano. Okay? and then you're going to do some crescendoing. Just, I think my biggest concern for you when you're playing dynamics is going to be trying to get you from this to here. And what I mean by that is your dynamics are probably going to be mostly the same. We can always expand on that. So always strive to make your softs softer, so making your pianos more piano and your fortes a little bit stronger, so that we can make a much clearer difference between that. Okay? Part of that has to do with height. So playing softer means you need to play lower, and playing louder means you're probably going to play higher. Okay? And part of it also is velocity. And what I mean by velocity is how quick the stick moves through the air. So if you're going to play soft, you're obviously not going to use a super quick velocity for the most part. And then to play louder, you can use a quicker velocity. Now that's kind of the basics of that, but that's a good place for you to kind of start. So try experimenting with that as you're going through this particular piece and see if that helps you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me and we will try to sort anything out that's not as clear as I could possibly make it. All right? Thank you.